Guys, welcome back to the Lit Mag Lab podcast. I'm Jazz Marie, aka Vevna Forrow. So, previously on the podcast, we were in Tokyo. Well, not actually, you know what I'm saying. I covered Tokyo Poetry Journal and TPJ Press. So, if you're interested in learning more about their guidelines, some of the publication series they have, and what it's all about, listen back to that episode. I also took a good chunk of time sharing my connections to, Japan, over the years, right? Everything from Shotokan karate, taiko drumming, my family, and origami, right? And yeah, so yeah, a lot of memories shared on some of these podcast episodes for sure. But most importantly, right, again, this podcast, I just want to reiterate this, is not just for, publishers. It's also, again, for writers, submitters, and, even artists, right, looking for homes for their work. The episodes, right, are not back to back like that in terms of like, Q&As or, tips and submitter tips and stuff like that. So you have to dig into the episodes a little bit. Yeah. So today we're going to cover more so something that may be more interest to, founding editors or future editors, or even those running, again, currently running a Lit Mag journal press today and maybe are looking for distribution options, right? You may recall in episode 63, right? I covered Asterism Books. And this is it, right? An online bookstore and a trade distributor. So again, Asterism Books, right? Just that episode, you can listen back to that. I'm not gonna do the same tour around their site because I already, covered it in a separate episode. However, again, just a reminder, they work with prospective publishers, booksellers, librarians, and they also have a bookstore, so you can shop around and totally check it out. In regards to, the cost of Asterism Books, right? There are, again, no setup fees, right? They just take 24% of the final sale price of the book as of, 2025 here, right? Something, also to be aware of, right? They have an application process, right? So you can't just get automatically accepted into Asterism Books, right? They have to vet your publication. A lot of the places I'm going to show you today, also will. So we're going to cover, let's say, what are alternatives to Asterism Books? Let's say you don't get into Asterism Books. Like, what else is out there, right? Because they're not the only one that you could possibly work with in terms of, distribution. But Asterism, I must say, is really efficient and really cool. Before we, I cover some more background information on why this is important, a little bit further. Besides, obviously inventory management, organization, having orders efficiently, shipped out, right, and tracked. Asterism, what I like to do for, distributors and any place I work with, right? I like browsing out on their social media feed. So these are some public photos. If you're curious what I'm talking about, right? Let's say you have a large batch of issues or magazines or books, right? And you can't handle and track all of those orders yourself. What they do, right? Asterism Books, for example, they, have you, send over, right, your materials, as they say, in a timely fashion or by a structured date, right? And they store all of that. They handle all of the, right, the packaging, the shipping of it, all of that, right? And yeah, so it sort of looks like this is public on their, Twitter feed, or formerly Twitter X, right? I don't really use Twitter a bunch, but some still do. So that's what it looks like, very organized. Check out these photos from Asterism Books. It's very cool. I didn't show these photos on Asterism Books episode because I think it's more appropriate to give you an idea of what distribution like entails, like what that really looks like. And keep in mind, they also have an online bookstore as well on top of this. So yeah, it's very organized. You can see overall, right? Look at all of that. They have the boxes and everything shelved and cataloged, and their warehouse, right? So it's a little behind the scenes photos they have, publicly available over there. They had even some open houses and things like that out of Seattle, Washington, I believe, right? So yeah, you can see they really do help a lot of presses and, magazines and journals and publishers, right? So, however, again, not everyone can get into Asterism Books. I shared, right, I got a decline, and I think that's predominantly because we didn't have a consistent, release series, right? We don't have a very large series to date. The Lit Mag and Journal and Press I run as of currently. We're also doing a relaunch of our Dippity Lit Mag, one of our main series. So I totally may circle back around, you do have to wait, after a while. They have X amount of months, I think, or a time frame. You have to wait before applying again. So just keep that in mind. Some of these other places I'm going to show you, right, alternatives to Asterism Books, if you can't get in, right, may have different, slightly different criteria, but kind of similar. So just keep that in mind. In any case, be sure to watch, episode 63 again, where I cover Asterism Books. Very cool. Even if you're not a publisher or a librarian or a bookseller, listening to this episode, it totally is fun just to check out, lit mags, journals, and presses. Again, they have a list of them, all the places that they help, distribute, the publications and yeah, and the presses, everything. So very cool. Just another way to find great reads and presses, and maybe more places to check out as well as a submitter or writer yourself. And yeah, especially if you love to read, right? So yeah, now some background information for you guys. So this is important because on March, I'm quoting this off of CLMP, by the way, the community of literary magazines and presses, right? So this is a public page, right? I'm only, I'm not logged in or anything. This is publicly posted. Some portions of CLMP site are members only access. So of course, I'm not going to show you anything like that, of course, right? So yeah, this was posted, and updated actually this month, August 11th, 2025. So again, on March 28th, 2024, Small Press Distribution, SPD, a distributor that served hundreds of independent literary publishers, announced on its website and in a letter to publishers that its operations had ceased effective immediately. So CMP created this page because a lot of places got hit by this, right? We didn't, of course, because we weren't, with them, but it did hit the community hard, of literary magazines and presses, right? They're like, then who are we going to use, right? Who's going to fill that gap? So they have a guide here. It's for members, right? You have to, join the CLMP membership, right? Yeah. So I am, Dippity Lit Mag, we're a member of CLMP, and I know a lot are. So, you can read more about the membership. I covered, I think it was it episode 16? I think it was episode 16 or around there, slightly under episode 20, where I covered, CLMP, a little bit about the benefits of having the membership. And I may do a separate episode on CLMP itself, just showing you around the public pages, of course. I did show, right, the calls for submissions page, but again, they have a lot more resources and stuff when you, become a member. You can, find out more, right? And yeah, in any case, yeah. So this guide is not publicly accessible. I'm not going to click into that, obviously, but they do have, a list. If we scroll down here, right? SPD publisher distributor list. So this is public, right? So CMP compiled a list of all publishers distributed by SPD at the time of its closure and their new distributor or new methods of distribution. So this is really helpful. So if we click on this list here, right? So it says presses formerly distributed by SPD, where they are now. This is very helpful, right? So you can see here we have the publisher name and the distributor, in the column. If you're watching on YouTube or Spotify, you can see what I'm talking about. Again, yeah, so there's this page here and it lists out all the publisher name and new distributor. So on the right-hand column, right, so we can see Asterism Books, right? Just what I showed you, right? So Asterism Books has filled, helped fill that gap that, SPD, right, since it shut down and was, just closed its door and shuttered. It really affected a lot of places, right? So yeah, Asterism Books, right? And there's other ones, right? Ingram, Amazon, and PM Press is one that I have not heard of. Let's check out PM Press. So yeah, PM Press is it looks like one too. That's one I just came across just now, so I'm not familiar with that. But you can see here they have a whole list. Itasca Books, right? That's tied to Bookmobile. I shared with you. They're based out of Minnesota, my home state again. And yeah, so I'm going to show you around some of these places' sites too. Not all of them, of course, but just to give you an idea of what's out there, right? There's Consortium Book Sales and Distribution, so many out there, right? So yeah, you really have to just, click on these and dig around. And yeah, again, this is a public page, so it's really beneficial for others. You can see Asterism comes up a lot, right? And then, some places are just using, Lulu or, Amazon, they don't necessarily have, a distribution partner, right? It says self-distributed via publisher website, right? So yeah, not everyone is fortunate enough to, work with distribution service, right? Sometimes it's not free. Asterism thankfully is, but there are others I'm sure out there that have upfront costs, right, for being with them or something, possibly. I'm not sure what, it really looks like, for places internationally. Just a reminder, Asterism, that has worked with places that are located outside of the US, one being Canada, right? I came across this post here by Metatron Press, which I've mentioned on this podcast once before. You can see back in May of 2023, it says Metatron Press will begin working with Asterism Books to help distribute their books to the United States. Again, Metatron Press, if you scroll all the way to the bottom here, they're based out of Montreal, Quebec, Canada, I believe. So yeah, you can see Asterism Books has helped a lot of places for sure. And yeah, so if we go back to this list, right, you can scroll down. There's a lot of places here. So that's the end of the list. But yeah, there are, more than what's listed here, out there in existence. So just keep that in mind. Um, you may recall, guys, so in episode, I think it was 24, right? So in that episode, I was covering, right, my experience of trying to get into physical bookstore locations myself, right? And that was me just reaching out to places, right? Barnes and Noble, some local bookshops, various places across the US. And even internationally, I was just curious, what their response would be. Like, I was like, all of our series, right? We have it pushed to the Ingram network. Is it possible for us to get shelved? They're like, yeah, send us a preview of it. We'll look at it. We'll see, and we may order it. We may, and yeah. So I never heard back from any place to confirm that. But over time, I saw Ingram network orders, so I don't know. I don't really know. You can't see, with my POD, right? I mentioned, right? We were using Blurb, right? I never saw exactly who was ordering what. So I don't know if we ever got shelved anywhere or if anyone even looked at the issues, bookshop wise, physically on shelves, or if it ever landed anywhere. I don't think it did. So I shared, sometimes my epic fails on this podcast too, or things I could improve upon myself or look into further. And yeah. So in terms of, being able to be in physical locations, bookshops, distribution services can help lit mags and presses get into more locations, physical locations. The more locations you're in, right, and others see, oh, they're carried here, and then another place we want to carry you, right, and then they can be easily distributed, right, through Asterism Books, or they handle, right, the inventory tracking and the stock, right. You're just like basically, right, sending it off to them to manage that inventory and to make sure that the shipping goes out on time. So yeah, if you are a solo founding editor, of a lit mag journal, and you're not with any distribution partners or anything like that, then yeah, it's going to be a lot of door to door, not physically necessarily, of course, but just calling bookshops up, maybe emailing them, filling out forms, to see if they're willing to pick up your publication. It's going to be a lot akin to, a self-published writer, trying to get their book shelved, unless it becomes obviously a bestseller. Places obviously want to pick it up, right? But it's hard, right? And most importantly, right, again, you want to make sure your publications have an ISBN, and also ISSN. I covered that in episode 12, the difference between the two and why you should have, why you should have it, right? The benefits of having an ISBN and benefits of pushing it to the Ingram network, right? Being able to be ordered by major, bookstores and shops, right? So there are totally some local shops and places that, carry, publications without that. Okay, keep in mind, it's not like it'll be barred from all places just because you don't have an ISBN, but it makes things much easier and opens the door a little bit more, much more actually. So yeah, but it's still really hard. It's super hard for anyone to get shelved, or, to even partner with a distribution service or to get accepted into one. It doesn't necessarily mean, it doesn't necessarily come down to you have like 50 publications out there or 20 or 30. I know some editors in the community have, again, gotten decline notices, and they had that many in their series, like 20 something, right? But they didn't get accepted, right? It wasn't necessarily coming down to quantity. It was other maybe criteria taken into consideration. I think it's so important to have consistency, whichever place you go with, in terms of releases and everything. So you have to read the criteria, what they're looking for, or maybe even reach out to them and really ask. Because once you apply and you get a decline, usually you have to wait. You can't, just keep applying. You can't do that, right? So yeah. In any case, I think Asterism Books, its online bookstore, trade distributor, it's very awesome for sure. They have a very cool setup, a very clean and nice website for sure. It's really organized well. So again, so I'm going to start covering some alternatives to Asterism Books. Some of them I clicked into and you saw, right? I'm not aware of them. So for the first time, guys, this is going to be my first time going out to some of these places myself and just showing you around their sites. I will say, if you are a solo editor and you can't get into any distribution services and you've tried and tried, again, I know some founding editors, they literally have all of their inventory at home. They do all the shipping, delivery, and packaging themselves, and they use, there's inventory, management software, right, that you could purchase or sign up to, right. Some in the community that I've heard about, ShipStation, and I think Shippo is a competitor. So you usually can find, various rates and stuff, on shipping and stuff like that. I think, there's stuff like Pirate Ship and stuff calculating, cheaper shipping rates. But yeah, there are other inventory management systems you could use out there, for keeping tabs on all the orders. I know some founding editors just use an Excel spreadsheet, but I think that's a little bit too hard. Or maybe they have it into, something connected with their subscription management, solution, right? I did cover in an episode on, how to facilitate print subscriptions, various integrations with WordPress and some other ones out there that I've heard about in, I think, episode 20. I also covered digital subscription, right? Options like exact editions I covered in episode 62, right? They do, by the way, have a CLMP membership discount that, for this year, by the way, for exact editions for digital, there, if you're going to work with exact editions, right? So yeah, just keep that in mind. I forgot to mention that, but yeah, you can listen back to all those episodes, 24, 20, 62, 63, and 12. I think it may help you. Yeah, so yeah, let's get going here. So first one we're going to cover, again, aside from Asterism Books, Bookmobile, right? So they offer dropship and distribution services. They also have some other additional services that they can help with totally. You can see here at itascabooks.com. So if you click into that, this is what it looks like. This is their bookstore, right? And so you can see here distribution fulfillment, a division of Bookmobile, right? And yeah, so they have a really nice site too. It's very organized. And again, they have a CLMP publishers section here. They have a CLMP membership discount, if you do a quote with them. Now, the thing to keep in mind, right? So we go back here, right? You have to keep in mind that not everyone can order a large batch, right, of issues or magazines or journals. So you really have to keep that in mind, for your Lit Mag journal press. If you're unable to do this, right, to do large quantities of orders, to work with distributors, to send them out to warehouses, or to even have like Bookmobile has printing services and drop ship and distribution services, right? And then they have a warehouse and they can store the inventory, handle the shipping and delivery. But and I don't see any application process here, anything like there. I see, it says here, right? So I think they just here, it says with drop shipping, they fulfill your website orders, mail out your advanced reader copies, or ship new or backlist issues of your journal or magazine, or, whatever the publication is, right? So yeah, I don't think Bookmobile has any sort of application process, so just keep that in mind. It is a good alternative, maybe, if you're someone who is able to, maybe order large quantities, have them, handle all of the everything, right? The heavy lifting, and, it creates less stress for you, right? I think if someone else is really doing that, if you're a founding editor, maybe has physical challenges, or can't really do all of that, all the shipping, delivery, packaging, right? You totally may want to leverage something like Bookmobile, right? There are probably other ones out there, but they've been around for quite some time. And yeah, I mentioned print on demand places, right? And yeah, if you're someone who doesn't have the budget to do large quantity orders or anything like that, you may want to just, and do one-off printing, as needed, then you may want to go with a POD service, right? I covered that again on this podcast. And yeah, I think it was, again, just a reminder, episode 19. Yeah. So where I was going over print on demand services, the ones I had experience with, the longest I've had experience with is Blurb, which was very reliable again. But I think, drop ship and distribution is very cool. and they really streamline things at Bookmobile, right? So it's completely different, right, from print on demand. And they have some really other cool services, right? They even do like ebook conversion, book design, and I think they help with Amazon listings. Bookmobile, literally almost does it all, right? So yeah, I personally like designing my own issues and stuff like that, and doing the ebook conversion. But if you're someone who just wants to create your issues, and not worry a whole bunch about shipping, delivery, all of that, the orders and keeping tabs on all of that, it is really good to leverage a distribution, service or platform, right? And yeah, so Itasca Books is definitely, cool. So they also list their book, on, Amazon seller and on Itasca Books. So you have like, listings there, alongside other publications so others can discover you, which is really nice. They also, try and it says here to sell your books through as many channels as possible, including physical bookstores, libraries. Yeah, it says print distribution to trade. So yeah, I don't think I've clicked on this page before, but yeah, Itasca Books was formed in 2004 by longtime publishing professionals with deep digital experience too. So yeah, you can reach out to them, request more information. I did generate a quote just because I was curious, and they said, yeah, your CLP members, you get a discount. Itasca Books, it says it's located in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That's where I'm from, actually. But I moved out of Minnesota in 2017, so I'm in Nevada now. But nevertheless, I thought it was really cool that they were based on my home state, because I never really heard about them. I was like, oh, this is awesome. They do that, and they've been around a very long time, since 2004. So that's really cool, yeah, looks like, yeah, almost it's such a long time. So they've no doubt have been around, and they know the ins and outs of distribution. So see all the services they provide here, right? You can store your books in their climate controlled insured warehouse. So yeah, I haven't seen photos of Bookmobiles, or Itasca Books set up, but maybe if on social media, I don't know if they have channels, you might be able to find something. But I think it's cool to see like behind the scenes photos. So yeah, they said you store their books in their climate controlled insured warehouse. You distribute your title information to they do Bowker, Ingram, Baker and Taylor, Barnes and Noble, and Amazon. So you really don't have to worry a whole lot about that. For me, that is a lot of, I really didn't have any help doing that, starting to be lit mag and stuff like that, and some lit mags and journals just end up using for cost savings, right? They don't purchase ISBNs from Bowker, right? Some just sell off their website totally. That's what they do. Some never go to distribution services or platforms. But I think if you can afford to do so, and to do it, it's worth it. It's worth it because it's so important to have orders organized, tracked, and delivered in a timely fashion. If others are ordering issues and they're not getting it, then it's really going to cause a mess, right? And it's going to lead to a lot of complaints and issues, right? So it's nice to have someone really there to support that whole process to make sure it's very smooth, right? Smooth sailing. That's what you want. And I'm not saying you can't do it all by yourself, shipping, delivery. You can, I think the benefit of the one thing, if you're going to ship out issues yourself and handle all of that, is that you can add a personal touch, right? I've seen editors include gifts, cards, and some bonus merch in boxes that they hand packed. And I totally would have loved to do that myself, with Dippity. I mentioned this on the podcast, but I think it's, I just can't, right? It comes down to budget and, resources. I also have, some things going on my left side. So no way I would be able to do it at this time, but I'm that type of person. I like packaging things, personalizing it. I would totally have loved to do that, It's really up to you. But I think, look at the services, right, that Bookmobile provides. It's really extensive. And again, Asterism Books has, they do distribution to physical, right, bookstores and locations. They help others, totally. And inventory tracking, all of that, right? And they monitor stock levels and tell you, hey, you're out, right? And you send some more over, right? We got to distribute them out, right? I guess. So yeah. Anyways, I'm on Bookmobile here right now. You can again listen back to the Asterism Books episode where I was sharing my thoughts a little bit, doing a tour of their site. But yeah, it says Bookmobile process orders for your books from retailers and wholesalers. It says pick orders, pack in the orders are packed in double wall cartons. They ship to retailers and wholesalers. Process payments from retailers and wholesalers. They process returns from retailers and wholesalers, inspecting for damage. They provide monthly reports for each of your titles showing detailed sales, returns, freight costs, payments from resellers, and returns, credits from resellers. They disperse checks to you for payments, receive net of fees. They drop ship orders on your behalf or review copies, events, office copies, orders from your website. So their trading partners are here, right? Amazon, Barnes& and Nobles, BN.com, Books A Million, hundreds of other retailers. And book wholesalers, Ingram Books, Baker and Taylor, Broad Art, Follett, Mackin, MBS Textbook Exchange, and dozens of others, right? So yeah, and you can see they have a Better Business Bureau rating, A plus, right? As of August 27th, 2025, guys. That's awesome. So yeah, it says here again, they were independently owned and based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Bookmobile began as a design and typesetting production house in 1982, then started offering print services in 1996 and distribution service in 2004. So they really do it all, guys. They have a lot of experience, to really eliminate headaches. I think this is a good alternative to, Asterism Books. It is, it for sure. Again, you could ask them questions. I don't know everything about them. I haven't worked with them. I did just generate a quote. And maybe one day, we might be able to work with distribution service, with the Lit Mag Regional Press I run. I think we're just too small at this time, and I don't have the budget or funds to really facilitate anything in terms of large quantities, really large, right, volume, and to really, carry that out. Of course, if places really want to pick up your series, they'll reach out to you too, I guess, that happens as well. But in any case, just showing you again what exists, right? Asterism Books, again, by the way, the other one I covered, they mentioned, I think, a dashboard or something, where you can, I think, track and see what's happening, on with orders and stuff. I think that's what I read. I could be wrong. But anyways, yeah, you can dig more into their FAQ page, right, on Asterism, and def check out again, Bookmobile and Itasca Books, right? Because that's really cool. And check out just titles in general if you're looking for more reads. I think that's really nice. So yeah, definitely would recommend Bookmobile. I've heard a lot of great things about it. Itasca Books, aka really, really good services for sure. Next one I have heard about is Small Changes. So I have no experience with Small Changes. This is the very first time I'm on their website, or second time, I should say. But first time digging around through it a little bit more, if you guys. So it says Small Changes supplies magazines, calendars, and gifts to hundreds of retail accounts across North America. They service natural food stores and co-ops, independent bookstores, newsstands, specialty shops, and more. And yeah, so you can see they have, magazines here. Let's just click around on their site. It says they cater to a diverse marketplace again, and, they provides their retail partners with a wide range of domestic and foreign magazines. Their titles reflect alternative lifestyles, art, literature, design, environmental issues, fashion, food and beverage, health, sports and fitness, and etc. So many gardens, farms, science, technology, you name it, right? So they have a monthly report of potential new titles, discounted titles, and they provide the ability to restock issues of magazines when retailers are low on stock. So you can see they have a whole, it looks like a list here, a magazine catalog. I think this is a public list I can pull up. So yeah, look at all this, guys. They have like the retail price and all the places that they, I have worked with, basically, it looks like. So yeah, you can see American poetry reviews on the list. I'm trying to see if any names I recognize here. Yeah, there are definitely some journals and, magazines I'm aware of. Some of these I haven't heard of before. Not all of these are literary magazines, obviously. Yeah, that's a very long list. I think it's 4 pages here. So yeah, this is updated. So they are, totally updating this list and on top of it. And yeah, they have examples here, right? Of, yeah. They are also based out of Seattle, Washington, like Asterism Books. I think that's interesting. So yeah, I don't know where, well, there's other ones I'm going to show you that I haven't really browsed around yet, but, that are probably located elsewhere. But yeah, so you see they have books and, yeah. Says books are sold non-returnable at a 40% discount. So yeah, it's a little bit different for Small Changes. Now, keep in mind, you're like, how do I get into Small Changes, right? Well, you have to obviously, I think, reach out to them. I think they have an approval process too, a vetting process, of your publication or series. So I don't know what it looks like. I've never tried reaching out to them myself, but obviously you can contact them, right? Totally. Yeah, same applies to all the other ones that I'll cover after this. But yeah, so They have a magazine page, and again, right, so you can dig around a little bit more of what I just showed you. So what else do we got here? I think some other ones popped up right when I clicked on it. PM Press, I don't know much about PM Press, but this was listed in that CMP list. Okay, guys, so one more we're going to cover is Consortium. So yeah, this is, I think, the list of publishers they have. I recognize some of these, like Clash Books and Copper Canyon Press. So yeah, this is Consortium Book Sales and Distribution. It says here, I'm quoting this: Consortium offers comprehensive sales representation to every market channel, independent bookstores nationwide, national accounts such as Amazon and Barnes & Noble, wholesale accounts including Ingram and Baker and Taylor, academic course adoption, public and school libraries, gift stores, museum stores, special markets, and more, right? More, totally. It says sales reps, top-notch independent sales reps visit bookstores across the United States and Canada, while in-house sales staff manage national accounts. So, and Leah's with Ingram's gifts, special sales, mass merchandise, and international sales staff. Consortium publishers can meet with members of their sales team 4 times a year, thanks to their rigorous pre-sales and sales conference schedule. So yeah, they have an in-house sales staff, and and everything. So it says, in terms of logistics and shipping, I scrolled down here. Consortium publishers are located around the globe, and it says they are well equipped to assist with shipping and logistics requirements. Consortium is partnered with a third-party shipping company delivering monthly consolidated shipments into the United States from both the UK and Hong Kong. So yeah, it says publishers who utilize the consolidation enjoy the benefit of lower costs due to the higher volume, as well as having inventory delivered directly to the Jackson, Tennessee warehouse. Consortium is also able to arrange domestic Canadian shipments directly to their warehouse from, your printer or supplier, whether it be ground, LTL, or truckload shipments. Publishers, again, enjoy the benefit of lower shipping costs due to higher volume, as well as having inventory delivered directly to their warehouse. And so yeah, this one's really cool. I'm not familiar with them. It's one that I think was listed. Yeah, so it might be one to check out. And see, they have an apply and join site page here. Yeah. So yeah, you have to send, to see here, 1 or more sample titles for Consortium, right? An overview of your company and current distribution, a brief overview of your current prospective publishing program, a list of front list, backlist titles, publication dates, author and promotional information, your current catalog, and it takes 6 to 8 weeks for a response. So yeah, I think that's nice. So yeah, you typically have to send samples in and stuff like that. Some places have you do that, some places may not. It all depends. I don't know, every place is a little bit different in terms of their vetting process. I think, for, these are places that really help with physical distribution, but, with digital distribution, mainly, you still have to send samples. I've had to send samples while reaching out to various places myself, both digitally and, physical samples I've mailed, for certain things I had to do with my own Lit Mag drone press. So yeah, I think are they also based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, or they have it looks like they have a location. Their publisher acquisitions location is Minneapolis, Minnesota. That's interesting. And then outside the United States and Canada, it says they have their London address. So yeah, just keep that in mind. So yeah, you can go out to their website. Again, I'll drop links to all of the ones I'm covering here. So yeah, I'm not sure about PM Press, what their process is. So yeah, I'm not sure about PM Press, right? This one I came across, but it was listed in that table that CMP had on their public SPD alternatives rec page, right? So yeah, we covered small changes, and what else? This, I think it's Disticor. Yeah, Disticor is another one. So I'm not familiar with them again. This is probably the first time I'm digging around more so on their website. I don't know where they're located, but let's just look at the About Us page right away. So Disticor, again, Disticor. They are, it says here, a privately held corporation, whose owners are directly involved in day-to-day operations. They have hands-on experience, the owners, right? It says John and Mark Lafreniere, and in terms of like long-term vision, toned over shared 50 years in business, and which successfully steers magazines through the distribution process. They've won awards, it looks like, and were nominated. Yeah, the EY nomination for the Canadian Productivity Award and named to the top 50 best managed private companies by the Financial Post. Disticor Magazine Distribution Services and its subsidiary Disticor Direct distributes over 4,000 domestic, international, mass market, and special interest magazines to newsstands throughout Canada and the United States. Their title lists span 50 categories and several languages. So yeah, they work with a lot of in terms of distribution for sure. They have services outlined here, right? They have an FAQ page. Um, you know, Disticor Direct has been servicing Canadian retailers from coast to coast for close to 40 years, regardless of size. Retailers receive the utmost care and customer service for the finest magazines available. And yeah, they have their contact information and all of that here. FAQ, So yeah, again, they are national distributor magazines, and they offer bi-weekly, monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, and annual publications in over 60 different categories. Their head office and warehouse is located in Oshawa, Ontario. Disticor, Quebec is located in Montreal. I could be mispronouncing that, Disticor. I apologize again in advance, or any names on this podcast. So the benefits again of using their sales program, direct one, is they have 100% risk-free sales opportunity with no upfront investment, easy credit for unsold magazines, weekly delivery updates, special news flashes, personal customer service for shipments and billing. Magazines, it says, they cover, how the benefits and stuff, and, what happens, how to places return, what they don't sell. And, so yeah, you can read more about it. They have publisher services here. I was going into, by the way, just now, retailer services. So this is publisher services. It says, in addition to developing precisely targeted distribution programs, performing initial testing campaigns, and developing promotional strategies, Disticor clients have their own login access, where they can see sales information 24 hours a day, 24/7, right, 7 days a week. And they have retail, wholesale sales data. So yeah, a lot of these distribution places that you work with, they'll give you like a login, maybe a dashboard to track everything, see what's happening, order wise, the sales wise, all of that. So yeah, it says, as an international, distributor of newsstand magazines, Disticor utilizes the full mass market wholesale network in North America. They service in excess of 125,000 retailers. So yeah, again, Disticor Direct is Canada's largest international direct-to-retail distributor, right? So yeah, they're working with thousands of titles, right? Over thousands. So yeah, I would say I'm not familiar with them a whole bunch, but they have a publisher FAQ. So it says, why? So this question is here on the FAQ page. It says, why can I use only one distributor? It says, since all national distributors work with the same newsstand distributors, and since magazines are sold on a sale or return SOR basis, financial and distribution functions would be impossible to regulate if there was more than one distributor servicing the same client publisher. Okay, guys, so this is something to take into consideration here, right? It's stating here, right, that they say you can only really work with one distributor, right? So keep that in mind. You can't just work with like 5, 6, 7 distributors, right? You have to really pick one. A lot of lit mag journals and presses, right, were leveraging, right, SPD. SPD shuttered its doors. So yeah, Disticor is reiterating, right, why you can only work with one, and why it's good to work with one, right? Because of that, right? It's using the same distributors, and it says the functions would be difficult. So yeah, it says, who are the wholesalers? So newsstand wholesalers are the final link between the publisher and the retailer. They deliver issues on a timely basis, invoice and process returns, and credit retailers in various cities throughout the world. And they supply copies on a limited basis to specialty outlets not normally serviced by newsstands, wholesalers. And again, there's 1,000 retailers in the USA and 10,000 retailers in Canada selling magazines. It says here, I don't know when these dates are exactly, when this was last updated, but just quoting this off their site. So yeah, I'm not gonna read through all of this FAQ page, but yeah, it says they have other things, to take into consideration here with their services, and yeah. So I'm just scrolling through here for you guys. Yeah, so it says shipping magazines to our designated wholesalers is the responsibility of the publisher. It says they generally arrange shipping for their clients by utilizing an forwarding or breakup agent. It says these agent pools shipment going to the same destinations as a result of tremendous cost savings are realized. So yeah, their FAQ page is something you really have to read carefully, I would say, with them. It has, very specific terms and things to take in consideration. It's nice to see. I like seeing FAQ pages. So it covers returns and, production. They have, the site requires from its publisher clients a calendar of due dates leading up to the ready ship date from the printer. The print order due date is the final date they can submit their newsstand order to you or something. And yeah, it says their marketing staff must present their publication to buyers or the wholesale category buyers for their signed authorization, for getting into grocery stores, convenience, and bookstore chains. And yeah. So it says all magazines on newsstand must feature a UPC barcode on the front cover. The barcode identifies the magazine throughout the distribution channel. And yeah. And then it says the first 5 digits identify the publisher distributor, the second 5 digits identify the magazine title. And yeah, so UPCs are a thing too. And yeah, so it says, to obtain your UPC, BiPAD number, you must use a Disticor sign number when utilizing their services. They will provide a number. And yeah, so really it's important, for, distribution records, right? Whenever even like ISBNs, right? It's a way to track things, right? And UPC codes, right? So again, basically tracking things, recording, right? Their distribution records and everything, right? It helps identify the issues, right, and stuff. So yeah, I'm not gonna it says here, right, can I print both a UPC barcode and an ISBN number? So it says credits charged off to separate departments, magazines, the magazine department, and books to the book department. A major bookstore chain in the US, it says, has moved to paying on scan. So it says in order to do so, they must be able to scan the issue code on magazines. If an ISBN is also present and it is scanned rather than UPC code, the information relating to the sale will not be posted to the issue and the sale will not be recorded. Therefore, there'll be no payment on reconciliation day. The sales are posted, the net sale recorded, and the actual returns will not equal the draw. The difference will be posted as shrink. Shrink is the responsibility of the publisher. So it says, yeah. So you want to take that in consideration, yeah, so I think that's interesting, right? That they list this out. This is all new to me that I'm reading about, this page, yeah. I'm not familiar with them, so this is all new information to me, some of it for sure. And yeah, so they have other questions here, but just some things to see. There's a lot to take into consideration when you're choosing a distributor, right? So they have an FAQ again for retailers, and I just was covering the FAQ for publishers. And yeah, so it's definitely one to think about. Disticor. I think they have a very thorough FAQ page, which is nice. I didn't really, see. I couldn't really see an FAQ page from small changes. I don't really see that, so I think it's nice that Disticor did that. Because I didn't really see that on some of the ones I'm showing you. So you really would have to meet with small changes. And Disticor, yeah, it sounds pretty awesome. They have a lot of titles that they work with, and yeah. So I covered that one. I covered that. What else, guys? So I've heard in the community and even on Reddit, just scrolling through, this one has come up a couple times. Accelerate 360. I have no knowledge about it. I don't really know much about what they do. It looks like they have Accelerate 360 Canada too. I think they had a different name at some point in time, but you can see they have wholesale distribution, logistics, e-commerce, and fulfillment. Now, I'm going to tell you this. So, if you go out and do research on some of these, like Accelerate 360, there are some reviews out there and things like that. You want to keep in mind to check reviews of some of these places, right? Totally. And, or even to maybe others in the community, are pretty comfortable like sharing, places they worked with and what their experience was with them. I have seen some things mentioning about packaging, shipping, and boxes, the quality of like packaging and stuff with some of these places. I can't remember which ones exactly. Just know that there are some reviews about that. So keep that in mind, yeah. So Accelerate 360 was one of them that came up a lot in when I was reading about it. But yeah, I don't know a lot of places that use Accelerate 360 personally, but it's one that's out there, just letting you know it exists. And you can read reviews, maybe find some online, or I'm sure if you like reach out to a founding editor, if you're an existing editor of a lit mag journal or looking to start one, and you reach out maybe to their friends in the community who share exchange their experiences totally all the time, even in I've seen in the community. So yeah, if you're looking for more feedback on some of these or experiences, because I it's a gray area for me. I've never worked with any of these places. I have it just interacted, I would say, with Asterism Books and Bookmobile, just like quote generation and Asterism, seeing what the application process was like. I was just curious, So yeah, another one I've heard about is National Book Network. I have no knowledge of them either, but I'm aware it exists. So yeah, it says they are an independent full service sales, marketing, and distribution company. I really don't know much about them. It looks like they are based out of Pennsylvania. And yeah, so I'm not really sure, about them, but it says for publishers, right? They have a publisher portal, obviously, title search, all of that, right? So they have a, for booksellers section, right? They share our publishers. Look at the list of publishers here, right? So yeah, I think again, I like going out to these distribution service sites because they have a list of publishers. And I think it's just really fun to go out and learn about some of these titles. These aren't all, of course, per se. I think you can see these aren't perhaps all literary magazines, journals, and presses on NBN, and the other place I was just on, Disticor, right, and even Small Changes, right. They don't work solely with literary magazines, journals, and presses, and or anything like that. I would say more so. I've seen Asterism Books name pop up quite a bit again, in that list for sure of places. So yeah, and they have bookseller applications on a lot of these places too, and publisher applications. So you just want to keep take that in mind. So here, Asterism Books again has this publisher list, which is really nice. And yeah, so I love clicking into these and seeing the various publications that they're working with in terms of distribution services to them and stuff. So yeah. So what else? Another one um, aside from National Book Network, right? So um, again, I don't know much about them, so I'm not really going to cover every single inch of their website or FAQ or anything like that. But again, they help their distribution company serving North American and overseas independent publishers of nonfiction, fiction, and children's titles. So yeah, that's one I've heard about. And then another one I saw listed in CLMP's list particularly. I didn't see NBN listed on CLMP's list, but that's one I came across online somewhere just through searching. IPG I've seen mentioned some places, and yeah, so you can see they have publishers here, right? So IPG, if we click on about, right? So IPG is the original independent distributor of books, ebooks, and audiobooks from publishers around the world, and a top 10 supplier of book content to Amazon, Barnes& Noble, independent bookstores, libraries, and specialty markets, in addition to thousands of retailers globally. Yeah, so they go in the history of, IPG and everything. I'm not going to read that, obviously, but yeah, so they have publishers they work with and all of that there. It's very organized, right? They have sections for booksellers, academics, libraries, and yeah, they have a publisher's login again. So obviously there's a portal, right, for publishers to track everything, right? They have their catalogs. So I'm not too familiar with them either. but they're based out of Chicago, Illinois. And yeah, so you could obviously, check it out right further. Yeah. I think, yeah, they have a very organized site too. Again, it looks like here. So that's pretty much it. I think I've covered all the ones I'm aware of or that I could find. Obviously, maybe there might be a couple others that are fairly well known that others are using that I'm not aware of. So yeah, these are just ones I've heard about, in the community, ones I've come across, just reading forums and stuff too. I would say it's a gray area for me still, distribution services, just because I haven't worked with any one on one. I've applied to some. I've reached out to some bookstores and shops, as I mentioned, I think in episode 24, but no success yet. No success in this area. I think because we're just too small starting out and we don't have, everything facilitated right with our series. But who knows? Maybe one day things will change. We'll get out there more into shops and physical locations. Who knows? Takes time to grow series out, to grow publications. Not everyone can get accepted into, again, these distribution services. They have a vetting process typically, to grant, distribution services to you, a login account, all of that. So yeah, check out IPG and check out, of course, Asterism Books, right? And yeah, and yeah, there are probably others here that maybe I didn't cover, right? You know, and again, some places just, go through Ingram, right? And yeah, or they sell on their site, right? So yeah, and then again, Consortium is one, Consortium Book Sales and Distribution, as I mentioned. And I'm not sure about PM Press, that was listed, so I'm not sure what that entails. Small changes comes up again. They have to vet your publication, right? For a lot of these, as I mentioned. And yeah, Disticor, right? Bookmobile, Itasca Books, right? They have great services overall, it looks like, based on, reviews, just what I'm seeing and things I've heard in the community. They do, again, drop ship and distribution. And I don't really see anything in terms of like application process or anything like that. I don't know if they have any, vetting process or anything like that. I generated a quote once and they got back to me, and then I think you go from there and can ask more about their services. I'm thinking that is. So I don't know if there's anything further beyond that. But it looks like they have a very, very organized setup too. Same with Asterism Books. But yeah, they have a lot of additional services for sure. Itasca Books and, through and Bookmobile overall, the umbrella, right, on their site. So yeah. Um, yeah, so definitely check it out. They have, again, the services all listed out here. So I think they really have it's worth it, I'd say, to go with, one of these. To me, Asterism Books looks really good, and Bookmobile, aka Itasca Books, yeah, those are two that have always caught my eye. These other ones I've never reached out to, but I've heard about. So it may be totally something you want to look into, if you're someone who doesn't like solo, shipping and delivering a large amount of inventory, right? Of course, they don't accept everyone, so just keep that in mind, right? Yeah. If you're not getting into any distribution services, right, it's going to be a lot of, door-to-door legwork, or just ask, door-to-door work, right? Asking, reaching out like it did, again, to bookstores, shops, right? And yeah, you really have to do a lot of the stuff yourself. But however, it's possible for you as a solo founding editor or journal, right, to just leverage a POD place. It is. Or even if you're starting a magazine or publication yourself, some, totally go through print on demand services because it's easier for them. It's maybe cost effective. The downside of PODs, again, is that they take quite a bit away from the transaction or sales. So you're not perhaps seeing, the same amount, right? Usually, right? They take quite a bit away from the sale, right, of orders. But they do, again, a lot of the heavy lifting, right? Print on demand, right? Services that I covered in on this podcast. I think that was episode 19, right? So you can listen back to the episode on various print on demand services. If you're, unable to maybe work with, large minimum quantity orders, right? There are a lot of places out there printing magazines, right? Non-POD places. I mean, also that, they have a minimum order quantity that you have to, do. So it's risky when you're dealing with large quantity orders, because let's say you need to make you made a massive mistake in an issue or revision, right? Then all of those issues have that error in it, right? Then, or the misprint, and it's like you can't really, all of that is, it's hard. Think that's risky. Some places are very easy to upload revisions and stuff, POD wise, not all of them. I have a list where I cover POD places, but I think it's hard working. It's not necessarily hard working with large quantity orders, but I would say, solo as a founding editor of Lit Mag Journal, and you don't have any distribution services or anyone else helping out, right, to deliver orders out, right, and stuff like that. That's really tough. So that's where these distribution services come into play, right? Asterism Books, Itasca Books, small changes, right? Disticor, and yeah, I'm not sure about PM Press again, but I saw that listed. Consortium Book Sales and Distribution, and yeah, so there's a lot out there. Accelerate 360 and IPG. So you gotta check these out for sure. They have, again, they have been listed, on this, press is formerly distributed by SPD, right? Yeah. So I think that's pretty much it. So if you're a solo founding editor of Lit My Journal and you can't get into any, right, distribution services or providers, right, you might just have to go through, POD plays, Ingram, or, like I covered a little bit in, sorry, 19 episode 19 and 12, I was covering ISNs and ISBNs. And you want to take that in consideration, right? Disticor mentioned that thing about UPC codes, right? So that's interesting, right? I'm not too familiar about that, but that's interesting. If they don't scan that, right, then it's not recorded, right? They scan the ISBN instead, right? They're saying, right? So I think that's interesting. So you have to read their FAQ pages very carefully. If there's no FAQ page, obviously you have to meet with the place further. It's always good maybe to reach out and learn more about it, ask questions. It's so important. So that's pretty much it. I again, this is still a great area for me. So I was just sharing places and names I was aware of, giving you quick tours of these places. I think it's very interesting. Again, Asterism Books, their setup, it's very organized and clean. Just an example of what a warehouse looks like. And I think Bookmobile had some photos that I saw too of their, Bookmobile more so, has more services in terms of, um, I would say you can see they have book services in terms of digital book printing, art book printing. Asterism Books, again, is an online bookstore and trade distributor. I don't know if they'll ever add more services, Asterism Books, like Bookmobile, like Itasca Books has. But in either case, I think, Asterism has a very, very cool website, I must say. And Bookmobile's, Itasca Books website's very nice. So I like seeing that, right? I like seeing things organized, very easy to navigate. I'm not familiar again with these other ones that I shared a few, so you might just have to, check them out. I'll drop links in the description. So I hope this episode helped you. Um, just some background information, on my end, right? So I, come from, again, a tech support background. So I have, worked with, various departments in terms of, providing tech support to them. That being included logistical departments and marketing and sales and customer support and human resources, just troubleshooting technology, right? Things they use, doing software installations. And I used to, install label makers and all kinds of printers and, scanners, right, for barcode scanning and all of that, right? I used to process orders for scanners and, make sure they were all, organized and all of that. And so yeah, I've done, support for logistical departments, and I used to work also for the first company I ever worked for, I did support for various departments, both on-site or remote. And then I went on to another company, which actually specialized in fulfillment and EDI solutions for distributors, actually, and vendors and, firms. So I think that's interesting, yeah. So, yeah, I, have experience like with SPS, they've worked with distributors, the other side, distributors and firms and various things. And I used to, they have EDI solutions and stuff like that. And they, yeah. I personally, I used to work at the tech bar there. This was a photo I had from a memory. I wrote an article around this, in one of the tech communities I was part of. So yeah, I used to, and this is the additional bonus content of the episode again. So I used to, do tech support, and those are my cartoon drawings with my computer mouse. So whenever I would have breaks, I'd usually just doodle on the back, or give out some stickers and stuff. I still actually, other poets in the community totally have picked up my stickers still till the day. So a lot of those are computer mouse drawn ones on the laptop you see here, and except for the exception of the owl. So yeah, I really love computer mouse drawing. That's something I loved over the years, but I had to, stop drawing because of, some things that happened in 2020. So yeah, but I still, absolutely love art and writing and all of that. So just sharing. So I actually do have, some knowledge of like logistical departments, fulfillment solutions and stuff like that. I did a lot of tech support, when I started working for ERP services, planning, solutions and order tracking and stuff. I did support over a lot of production workstations and, various labs and stuff. I would actually have to wear goggles, safety goggles and coats, and go into, various laser rooms, even places stuff, because the computers were there. So I had to like, troubleshoot and stuff around production equipment and stuff hooked up to computers. So yeah, this was bringing back memories of that, and totally, yeah. But yeah, so I think, this is great that CMP did this, put this page out there when SPD closed, and really was there for others to say, hey, you can go here, you here. It's again, CMP has other resources and stuff. This is a public page, that can be accessed. Of course, I will drop links to the ones I discussed. I think I covered some that I didn't see listed here too. I'm not familiar with them. Obviously, there are way more out there in the world. There are probably some internationally I'm not even aware of, too. But yeah, I saw some places come up quite a bit, like in Minnesota, Seattle, Washington, right? Not, and then there's some based in Chicago, right? Their warehouses, where they store the magazines, the issues, the books, right? So, they take a large quantity from the publisher, and then they handle all of the, inventory management, the shipping of it, and all of that, right? So the heavy lifting, right? Again, so I think it's really beneficial, right? And yeah, so I think, it's cool, right, to have help with like the order processing, and the shipping and all of that, right? You have to really see what's cost effective for you. I think if you're very small starting out, it can be hard, but if you have the budget to work with and that room there, and you're calculating it, I think it may be worthwhile to go through a distribution service, or, I think it helps to, establish your series, first though, and to have consistency, and to be able to say, hey, these are our issues, these are samples. This is when we publish, this is when we, release, this is, and then, have a consistent schedule. Because if they're not getting, the inventory from you right on time, or regularly, consistently, right, then that's going to really be hard on the distribution service you're working with, right? It's going to be hard for them. So yeah, a lot of these places, eliminate the headaches out of, right, logistics, right, in general, with like books and magazines and journals, and the shipping of them right off to physical locations. And they can even help you get into more locations. Totally. I've heard about, others being able to get into more locations by working with distributors, right, and services, right? Some of them, I shared with you, right, have sales, marketing teams. They really, really invest a lot of time in trying to get publications into more spaces and to help them. Yeah, so I think it's nice. Asterism Books, for example, they take 24% of the transaction sale. I'm not sure about the other ones here, what that really looks like or entails, but of course, like Bookmobile mentions, you can request pricing, Itasca Books, right? So, any case, if you are a writer or submitter listening to this, or, someone in general, totally check out the bookstores, right? Itasca Books is very cool, right? Again, so you got to check it out. You might come across some great reads. Same thing with, Asterism Books, right? You may come across some publishers too you've never heard about. I think it's really, really fun way to find more publishers and reads, for the year. Yeah. So I hope this episode helped you. Again, I'm not an expert on anything, but I am aware of like logistical solutions, fulfillment, and how that world works a little bit, but more so troubleshooting the software that you could say is used in for that, or just general tools, right? Troubleshooting and stuff on a day-to-day basis that some companies in that area work with. So yeah, who knows? Maybe one day we'll get into a distribution service, and I'll let you guys know. Of course, I run a lit mag journal and press, right, myself. And yeah, so you can dig in. Just a reminder, I know I repeated myself a couple times on these episodes, but they are technically connected all together. So I covered, POD services, the benefits of those, right, or my experience with them in episode 19. Print on demand, again, is different from drop shipping. Just keep that in mind. And I covered my experience just, because I wasn't with distribution services or anything like that, just reaching out to bookstores and locations trying to get shelved in episode 24. I covered print and digital subscriptions in episode 20 and Zacked editions in episode 62, which I mentioned, right? I think they have a CLMP discount this year, that they do digital subscriptions. And then there are other ones I mentioned in 20 that you should listen to. And then Asterism Books, right? I shared my thoughts on Asterism Books, gave you a tour of the online bookstore. And yeah, so yeah, that's basically it. I also talked about ISBNs in episode 12. So other episodes too, I share my journey, starting a lit mag journal and press, some tips also for writers, submitters, again too, not just publishers. So you really have to dig into the series. And yeah, so I hope this helped you. Again, highly recommend you check out some social media feeds of some of these places. Not all of them update their social media feeds, all the time, but I think this gives you a good idea of what it really looks like, a warehouse, Asterism Books. I'm glad they posted these photos out there because it is really beneficial, to see what that looks like, behind the scenes. It's a lot of hard work for sure, and they help a lot of presses and, magazines and journals for sure. Yeah. So I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. So I was saying like not every place has a social media account that I mentioned. Just keep that in mind. And that doesn't necessarily mean they're not like, active or anything like that, right? You saw small changes, right? I haven't seen if they have social media accounts or anything like that, but they have an updated list for August 2025. So you can tell they're active, they're working with publishers and things like that. So yeah, the application process with a lot of these places is hard. Again, I don't think Bookmobile or Itasca Books has that. I could be wrong. I don't know. So I don't know if they have any sort of application process or forms you have to fill out or vetting there. They do. Was able to generate a quote with them, and they were like, "Yeah, let us know if you want to fulfill this quote and go forward." So I don't really know what would happen after that. I haven't followed up because I just saw the quote and I was like, I don't think I'm able to do this the budget I have now. But I would say out of all of them, if I had to choose one to date, since since I didn't go forward with Asterism Books at the time, I would say I probably would go with, Bookmobile, Itasca Books, I'm saying, right? Yeah, just based on everything I've seen, their services, how long they've been around, it looks very reliable and, they do a very good job. And they have a lot of additional services to help you out, everything, in terms of the whole publication, setup and everything, shipping and facilitating that fulfillment of orders. It's a really, really great setup that they have. Yeah, so definitely check these out. So I hope this again helped you. Again, there are probably tons of others, if you're again a founding editor of a lit mag journal or looking to start one, and you don't, and let's say you're nowhere near to choosing a distribution service or working with anyone in that, volume or sending off inventory to be managed and shipped out, right? Again, there's tons of, software solutions out there, right? I mentioned like, I think Shippo, it might be one. I'm not sure. I've heard of them. If I'm wrong, you could of course do alternatives to Shippo, alternatives to, I think ShipStation, I've heard in the community, and other ones, right, out there. There are some neat shipping tracker apps out there that you could probably leverage. If you're just like having inventory in your own house or garage or wherever in your apartment, even, right? If you're just like managing the orders and individually packaging them yourself, right? That's a lot of work, but it helps to have some sort of software for that. And there's totally tons out there for that. So yeah, mainly I was covering, right, distribution services for lit mag journals and presses because again, SPD got shut down back in 2024. It was very heartbreaking for the community, a very heavy hit, and loss. So yeah, I think on the public page again here, if we go back, They also listed some funding opportunities, things like that. They update this page still. So maybe I'll do a separate episode touring CLMP a little bit more, just the public pages again. Nothing on the member only side, of course, right? So, yeah, you can look into maybe getting a membership with CLMP if you're, founding editor of a lit mag journal press, and learn more about, the benefits I covered in episode. Just a reminder, I think it was, I think I said 16, right? I could be wrong, but in either case, you can look back at that totally. So yeah, it was episode 16, the benefits of a CLMP membership. So you get a lot more resources. Like these aren't the only places out there. You could find that more maybe, through CLMP. They have all kinds of like lists and resources, right? But yeah, I hope this episode helped you. I was trying to do a summary and overview of it. I'm not really knowledgeable on like the whole process and, interactions with distribution services. What's that really like? But I, of course, obviously they want consistency from a lit mag journal again. They want to see you're organized, your series, and all of that. And Asterism Right was saying they also look at how you promote authors' work, and the quality of your series, right, is important, right? So they take into consider everything. I will say the amount of newsstands, I showed you Disticor, right? The amount of newsstands today that exist is not as many as there were, right? Looking back, maybe way, way back, right? Compared to now, because there's been a lot of digitization for sure, right? Just the other day, I was scrolling online and I saw somewhere internationally a newsstand got shut down, the long running one. It was very sad to hear, but there's still, getting shelved. A lot of people I love bookstores, bookshops, and getting, seeing your lit journal in physical locations is very cool, I think, and it's awesome, to get it into more hands, right? Into physical stores. And it's very hard to do that. It's hard to track all the orders from different places and to juggle all of that. So, it eliminates again working with these, distribution services, right? To eliminate the headaches you have there, all of your orders and everything like that. Obviously, you could probably set up meetings or reach out to some of these places, or some of them, I believe, have, they get a lot of inquiries and stuff. So, of course, it has to be very a serious inquiry, right? You have to be fairly certain you want to look into it or do it, right? So yeah, so just ones to keep in mind, just making you aware that they're out there. I don't have experience working with them one on one or anything like that. I'm just sharing names and places to check out. That's it. So hopefully, this was beneficial in some way or form, and you can dig into the other episodes I mentioned again. And yeah, so take care, guys, and yeah, bye, yeah. And you can see here real quick. I know I said bye and I scared you guys, right? Poetry and fiction, right? Consortium Books, right? There we go. I found it. So yeah. So yeah, you can see they have worked with, various publishers that focus on poetry and fiction. And that's awesome. Yeah. So yeah, totally. I just, I wasn't aware of Consortium Books and Sales Distribution till now, actually. Or maybe I heard about them, but I just couldn't remember. But yeah, you can check it out more later. So now, bye, guys. Take care. So that's all. I'm gonna dig into some of these lists, and it's another great way to find more publishers and places, that are very interesting and cool, for sure. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. I'm gonna sign off here, yeah. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. I'll try and do, we're getting closer and closer to, October and the other months here, right? September is coming up, October. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna, at some point in time, you may see me take a break and something, because I'm working on other things. But yeah, I will try to drop episodes whenever I can. If there's a question or something you have, feel free to leave a comment, or, wherever you're maybe listening, or, a thumbs up. It depends on the platform you're on, right? And I'll probably see it and maybe try to do an episode around it. No guarantees, but I'll try maybe an article or something. I do my best. I don't know everything, but it doesn't hurt for me to share my thoughts, of course, on something, or maybe I've experienced with it, or maybe I don't, and I can at least tell you, right? And you, so just trying to point others in directions of like things to check out, because I know it takes a lot of research really to find which services and platforms to use, which ones, are have been around a while, and which ones, seem to be, reliable. It's important to find ones that are reliable. Again, there are reviews on probably some of the ones I've covered, maybe on forums online. I've seen them from time to time. And I saw some things, on, in terms of packaging, delivery, and some things there, um, I think I saw some things mentioned about Accelerate 360. I can't remember exactly what it said, but yeah, so you just want to be mindful, right? You saw Itasca Books has an A plus, right, rating, from Better Business Bureau, right? And I'm sure some of these have been rated elsewhere, or there are some reviews out there. But in either case, yeah. So that's pretty much it. I wanted to do coverage again because, small press distribution, this was a huge event that happened, back in 2024. And yeah, so always helps to be aware of what else is out there. This is still something impacting others, finding distribution services every year, right? It's really, really hard, till today. Yeah, to find places to work with them. And of course, there's an application process for most of these places, or vetting process. So just keep that in mind. Not all perhaps have the same process, so just keep that in mind. Yeah. So take care now, guys. Take care. I'm gonna sign off, and yeah. So I will try to do a few more episodes here. Maybe we'll circle back to, some lit mag journals and presses, and who knows, maybe I'll do another episode on CMP one day. I did an audio coverage of it again back in 16, I think, or around there. So yeah, um, I just want to add again, CMP, by the way, with small changes, some other, services out there distribution wise. Benefit of the membership is that you have like sit-in sessions almost on some of these, not all, of course, but some of the places out there that, help publishers totally, literary magazines, presses, various platforms, services like that. So you can find out more information about them. So they have a really great resource library overall, a lot of great, meetings and events throughout the year, virtually, right? So yeah. So yeah, totally check out, episode again 16 on CLMP, a little bit, my thoughts on CLMP, and the benefits again of the membership. Totally. Yeah, a few episodes back again, I covered Asterism Books in 63. And yeah, so I just wanted to do an overview of some distribution services out there. I'm sure if you type, again, in search results like book distribution or magazine distribution services, you'll come up with maybe others, right? Or alternatives to this or alternatives to that, right? Some of the things I mentioned. It's a way to find more. But just some names I'm aware of that have come up that I found online too. One more PS note here. In regards to PM Press, right? I mentioned that they're a publisher, but also I think they help others, fellow publishers with their warehouse, and yeah, so they have a New York warehouse here. I went over to PM Press's like contact page and I came across this. I'm quoting this. It says warehouses are expensive, shipping is complicated. PM Press helps comrades stay independent and in the black by shipping their orders from their New York warehouse. And yeah, it says, talents working together to survive and thrive. And yeah, it says support the independent media ecosystem, become a fulfillment partner today. So then they have other things too for, Canadian orders and distribution, and other international orders, distribution, UK, etc. So yeah, it looks like, they yeah, help others. That's what I think. But they're also a publisher. I saw submission guidelines and stuff like that. So I had to do a little bit of digging. So I'm not 100% sure though. That's just how, I'm reading it, they were listed there, so yeah. Might be one to check out, and still, it's a very cool press, anyways, too. But yeah, it looks like they do have a New York warehouse. Now, Consortium, right? I'm gonna check out Consortium a little bit more. It looked really cool and interesting for sure. They have, again, I went by publishers by category earlier. So yeah, you can see, right? They have all these, right? And they have a poetry and fiction section again. So I'm gonna circle back to Consortium Book Sales and Distribution. They are very cool, yeah. So You see they have it on their main page. I wasn't on their homepage earlier, but it says I'm a publisher, I'm a bookseller, I'm a librarian, right? And then they have new and notable, and they have newsletters and more information, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it. I love checking out the publishers list, that these distribution services have. Just another way again to find some pretty cool literary magazines, journals, presses, book publishers, right, in the world, right, from around the world, right. Asterism has helped totally, for example, publishers around the world, and several of the other ones I've covered on this episode. So that's all I wanted to tack on here and share with you. So yeah, so those are some alternatives or distribution services or methods to really maybe help or check out or look into applying to, for sure. And I didn't cover all of them again, of course, so be sure to check out that public list that CLMP has compiled. It's right here. So yeah, I will drop a link again, to everything I covered. You may notice here in the list, right, there's some that state, Asterism Books and Ingram, right? So, totally some places, have, some of their series, right, distributed through Ingram Network, and then they work with distributors, right, and things like that. So I know Disticor mentioned, it's good to only work with one, distribution route, but yeah, obviously, and really every distributor or place you work with has, different criteria again and things to look at. So just read it carefully, right? Some places again request that you send samples. Some places don't. Some places may typically, yeah, totally, or some sort of previews, or you know, they may thoroughly assess, right, all all parts of your publication or series, right? So yeah, you can see a lot became, self-distributed via their website. So I don't know if places are, still looking for a distributor, or if they've decided to just, stick to doing it on their website. So again, I think Consortium, book distribution looks very cool. This was linked out, when you go to links, this took you to a place that was using them. So if we go back here, and going back to their homepage, yeah, so just keep that in mind. Sometimes when you click into like their list or somewhere else, it may take you to maybe the publisher's page versus like the home page again. But yeah, I'm definitely going to check out, Consortium, book sales and distribution for sure. Yeah, because they're based out of where I'm from originally, right, Minneapolis, Minnesota. So that's pretty neat. Another one, just a reminder, IPG, that stands for, again, Independent Publishers Group. They are based out of Chicago. Not familiar with them, but again, might be one to check out. So Ingram, right, is fairly well known. So I didn't really cover them because I think most are aware of Ingram and, their distribution, services, right? You can see here, it says authors, publishers, retailers, libraries, right? Ingram Content Group. I was reading about, some of the things there, but again, I don't really have a ton of experience with it. I've really heard mixed reviews about, everything Ingram, So yeah. So you might want to do some more research, totally. I hope again, what I covered here, was helpful. And yeah, so that's pretty much it. So check out, the list, and some of the other ones, that aren't listed here that I covered too. Might be some you know a way to get a distributor to help fulfill orders. Something that you know, the Ingram network, I think, does a good job of outlining just like what it looks like for, distributors in general helping, right? Inventory management, content preparation. Some places do help with book printing, not all, right? It depends on who you're working with. Some places have additional services, like I said, that they can help with, right? Like Bookmobile, Itasca Books, right? Stuff like that, drop shipping, POD. Some places do, POD, perhaps, like Ingram, I believe, has POD options. Yeah, so I'm not too familiar, with actually, going all the way through with Ingram or anything like that. But just know that, the Ingram content group looks like that exists, right? So yeah. Um, so that's pretty much it, you're really just trying to streamline, fulfilling orders and making sure, everything's packaged and gets delivered, right, to whoever ordered them. And I think it's so important, right? Because if, orders again aren't being delivered, if, there are problems with, your inventory management, right, a lot of things are going to fall apart. So you really want to work with a great distributor, right? And you want to have that facilitated, especially if, you're someone who you absolutely know, you're not going to be able to juggle, your inventory orders all by yourself. If you aren't able to, partner with a distributor or get onboarded with them, or they decline you, right? And you wait it out, you try changing things with your series, they decline you again, some places totally again go with, print on demand options or other, do just like self distribution through their own publisher site, right? Yeah, so they just keep doing that, right? And it's hard, but you can maybe, maybe add volunteer staff to help out, maybe, restructure your publication a little bit more so, in terms of, trying to ease operations in terms of shipping and, yourself, if you are doing it yourself. Some places I know do all the printing and shipping themselves again, so it's not like you absolutely need to have a distributor, but again, they can really help you, um, easily, send off, your inventory, right? You send it to them, they manage all the orders and tracking, like they do all of that, right? And then it's not a lot of heavy lifting for you. So I think that's pretty great. So yeah, but it's again, it's tough finding, distribution options, I think, till today, because again, they have like an application process, and you have to sometimes send samples over. And yeah, not every place again has a little bit different instructions for, you know becoming a publisher with their distribution, system and everything. So yeah, so again, you can check out this list. Also check out the other ones I've linked in the description. Yeah, like IPG, National Book Network, NBN, and Consortium Books, Sales and Distribution for sure. That one definitely looks pretty neat. Again, another one based in Minnesota, right? Itasca Books as well, and the two in Seattle, Washington, right? That was Small Changes, Asterism Books. And yeah, I'm not too familiar with Disticor. They seem to have a very thorough FAQ, though. Didn't read through all of it for you guys, so it might, when something's that extensive, right? It takes a couple times to read through it, but it's nice that they have that. I like seeing places have FAQ pages, but again, CMP, it's a good idea, right? If you're going to start a lit mag journal press, or you know you want to gain more knowledge in the space, right? I recommend, going for the CLMP membership to get more access to resources, to, maybe do knowledge exchanges with other, founding editors of, literary magazine journals and presses. They do, again, have some great virtual events throughout the year on, distribution and a lot of other things in the lit mag world. So that's all. Listen back to episode 19 again, where I cover POD places. I would say, aside from, right, you can see here Amazon, I think we even saw Lulu.com, right? And yeah, they have, right, global network distribution services, right? And same thing with Ingram, right? And then Blurb does it well. The thing about Blurb, right, another POD, right, if you push it to the Ingram network, it doesn't stay up there indefinitely. You have to have a, consistent amount of sales every year. Just a reminder, right? They ended up, like when I did it for one of my personal series, right? They ended up pulling everything and taking it out of the network, and then that typically ends up, on their server, right? Or yeah, I ended up losing everything because I didn't, order proofs of those when I did another upload of them again, or revisions to those, right? Back then, they didn't require that you always purchase a revision. Now they do, which is, different. So, yeah. In either case, I think Blurb was reliable, right? In terms of shipping and delivery. But yeah, Lulu.com, I'm most aware of, again, Amazon, tons of other ones out there. I'm also aware of like Book Vault and some other POD places, right? Totally, you can check out. But yeah, a lot of publishers, totally just, self distribute through their website or manage all the shipping and inventory themselves. But I think, if you grow and grow and grow as a publisher, and let's say you have, 50, 60 titles, or working with a very large quantity, right, of orders, it's really hard, unless you have a whole team behind it, helping you out with that. And, yeah, so it can be tricky. So I think, distributors, right, it's really great that they exist, right? So I didn't cover every single thing about each one of these, so, totally dig around on their website, read more about them, and see if it may be a fit for you. And do check back some of the past episodes I mentioned a couple of times, on this episode, just because, yeah, it helps jog my memory on things I mentioned too. And yeah, so most bookstores, again, when I shared on episode 24, I believe, right, this said, again, they only take things from the Ingram network. And that doesn't mean you have to go directly through Ingram and create an account, and all of that with them. It's more so, you have to make sure, that if you, again, are really keen on working, with distributors and getting into a lot of physical bookshops and locations, that it has, right, an ISBN. And I'm sure if the Disticor, right, they said the disadvantages of having both the UPC code and ISBN, where they end up scanning the ISBN and not the UPC code, right? They don't consider that a transaction, I recall. But anyways, I'm not really familiar with that. They have more information about, UPC codes again, and the whole, identifiers, right, for their, services. But yeah, I think you can, of course, right, bookstores don't order, from Amazon, um, you know, right. Typically, again, I've saw places on bookstores, right, that said we don't order from Amazon, or, when you reach out to them, they say we only order from the Ingram network. So again, there are POD places that allow you to push to the Ingram network or have global distribution without going directly through Ingram, itself. Yeah, so I think that's nice. Ingram isn't the only one in existence, so just a reminder. Um, but a lot of places use it. Even like the submission management system I'm on currently, right? So Folio, I covered it a couple times on this podcast. I believe there is, again, an Ingram Spark or Ingram integration, right? That's an addition, right? Part of Daemon, right? In there. I haven't looked into it much, but it may be something I do in the future. I'm not sure what it entails, because I'm still, fairly new on Subfolio with my team in terms of submission management systems again. So yeah, but yeah, so that basically covers it. There's a lot, to take consideration. You have to read very carefully, ask questions, of course, whichever place you're going to end up working with. And of course, they have to vet your publication. So as I said multiple times on this podcast, we as founding editors of lit mags, journals, or presses, we get decline letters. We don't get acceptances into, places we want to work with. It could be distribution wise, it could be, bookshops, bookstores even. But again, yeah, this was just something I really wanted to highlight because it still affects others till today, because a lot were familiar with SPD, and then it just like, completely disappeared and vanished, right? It got shut down and they had to cease operations, right? Yeah, so it's tough, that's why it's always a good idea, I think, to have other backup options in place, right? To have plans in place in case your distributor go let's say closes suddenly, out of the blue, right? It's good to have backup options in place, or to think about that, and to be aware of what else is out there. So that's it. And yeah, take care. Yeah.